Wilson Fisk, now the mayor of New York City, presented a surprising new image to the public. He spoke of peace, of rebuilding, of leaving behind the city's violent past. This was a Fisk who wanted to be seen as a legitimate leader, a man of the people, not the kingpin of old. He moved into Gracie Mansion with Vanessa, his devoted wife, and began to implement policies aimed at calming the turbulent undercurrents of the city. However, this newfound desire for a tranquil reign was not entirely shared by Vanessa. She had stood by him through chaos and brutality, and this shift towards a more diplomatic, almost subdued approach left her feeling unsettled, maybe even a little disappointed by the perceived lack of dominance she had come to expect from her formidable husband. This fragile peace Fisk sought was immediately threatened by simmering tensions within the city's criminal underworld. Two prominent gang leaders, Luca and Victor, found themselves locked in a bitter dispute. Their conflict was not a new development, but it had escalated significantly, threatening to spill onto the streets and shatter the mayor's carefully constructed facade of order. Luca, known for his volatile temper, felt Victor had encroached upon his territory and disrespected his authority. Victor, equally stubborn, refused to yield, believing Luca's claims were baseless and an attempt to assert undue control. Their animosity became a significant problem, a test of Fisk's new mayoral authority and his ability to maintain control without resorting to his former, more overt methods of enforcement. Vanessa, ever the pragmatist and perhaps yearning for the days of more direct action, decided to intervene in the escalating feud between Luca and Victor. She saw Fisk's attempts at diplomacy as slow and ineffective, potentially damaging his still-forming public image if violence erupted. Taking matters into her own hands, she arranged a meeting, not with both, but with Luca first. She employed a chillingly calm demeanor, reminding Luca of the power the Fisk name still held, regardless of Wilson's current political aspirations. Her objective was clear: to extract a significant sum of money from Luca, ostensibly as reparations or a peace offering for Victor, thereby quelling the immediate conflict through a demonstration of retained influence. Her actions, however, highlighted a growing rift between her and Fisk's current strategic direction. Vanessa's methods were a throwback to their earlier, more ruthless days, a stark contrast to Fisk's public pronouncements of peace and legitimate governance. She believed that true power lay in decisive, sometimes brutal action, not in the slow grind of political maneuvering. This frustration simmered beneath the surface of their interactions, a silent tension in their new mayoral residence. Vanessa worried that Fisk's desire for legitimacy was making him soft, forgetting the very tactics that had brought him to such a prominent position in the first place, even if that position was now draped in the respectability of public office. Meanwhile, the trial of Hector Ayala, accused of vigilantism as the White Tiger, was drawing considerable attention. Two individuals, Cherry and Torres, friends of Ayala and aware of his alter ego, felt compelled to help. They believed in his innocence, knowing his actions were driven by a desire to protect his community, not by malice. They made their way to the courthouse, their hearts heavy with a mixture of hope and anxiety. Their intention was to provide testimony that could shed light on Ayala's character and the circumstances that led him to become the White Tiger, hoping to sway the jury and secure his freedom from what they saw as an unjust prosecution. However, as the moment of truth neared, the oppressive atmosphere of the legal system and the potential repercussions of testifying began to weigh heavily on Torres. He was acutely aware of the dangers involved in openly supporting a vigilante, especially with Fisk now in the mayor's office. The fear of retaliation, not just against himself but potentially against his loved ones, became overwhelming. Despite Cherry's encouragement and his own desire to help Hector, Torres found himself paralyzed by this fear. Ultimately, when the time came, he could not bring himself to take the stand, leaving Cherry and Ayala's defense team one witness short and adding to the mounting pressure on Matt Murdock. In a stunning and ethically questionable move, Matt Murdock, Ayala's lawyer, made a critical decision. Seeing the case potentially slipping away and perhaps believing it was the only path to acquittal, Murdock chose to reveal Ayala's identity as the White Tiger in open court. This was a gamble of monumental proportions. He argued that Ayala's actions, while outside the strict letter of the law, were those of a hero, not a criminal. He painted a picture of a man forced to take matters into his own hands due to the failures of the system. The courtroom was thrown into immediate disarray. with gasps from the gallery and visible shock on the faces of the judge and the prosecution. The reaction from the presiding judge and the district attorney was one of strong disapproval and professional outrage. The judge admonished Murdoch for his unorthodox and potentially prejudicial tactic, questioning the ethics of revealing such sensitive information in that manner. The district attorney seized upon the revelation, attempting to use it to paint Ayala as a dangerous, uncontrolled operative who openly flouted the law. Murdoch faced severe criticism for endangering his client and potentially jeopardizing the integrity of the trial itself. His desperate move had undeniably captured attention, but it also risked backfiring spectacularly, leaving Ayala more vulnerable than before, exposed to the full scrutiny of the public and the law. Despite the courtroom theatrics and the controversy stirred by Murdoch's revelation, the tide began to turn in Hector Ayala's favor. The defense presented compelling witness accounts from residents of Ayala's neighborhood. These were ordinary people who had seen the white tiger in action, not as a menace, but as a protector. They spoke of instances where he had intervened in crimes, saved individuals from harm, and brought a measure of safety to streets often ignored by the authorities. Their heartfelt testimonies painted a picture of a community figure, someone who stepped up when no one else would, challenging the prosecution's narrative of a lawless vigilante. Further bolstering Ayala's defense were crucial pieces of police records that Murdoch's team had managed to unearth. These records, perhaps initially overlooked or deliberately suppressed, corroborated many of the witness statements. They detailed a pattern of slow police response times in Ayala's area, and in some cases, a complete lack of official intervention in incidents where the white tiger was later reported to have acted. This documentation subtly implied that Ayala's vigilantism was born out of necessity rather than a desire to undermine the law, filling a void left by an overstretched or indifferent police force. The combination of credible eyewitnesses and official records began to sow reasonable doubt in the minds of the jury. Ultimately, the jury returned a verdict of not guilty. The courtroom erupted, a mixture of relief from Ayala's supporters and stunned silence from the prosecution. The news of the acquittal spread rapidly through the city. Mayor Wilson Fisk, when questioned about the verdict during a scheduled press interview, maintained a composed, almost statesmanlike demeanor. He spoke of respecting the due process of the legal system, of the jury's decision being final. He offered carefully chosen words about the city's commitment to justice for all, regardless of the circumstances. His public reaction was one of measured acceptance, betraying no hint of personal frustration or anger. However, beneath Fisk's calm exterior, there was an undeniable undercurrent of menace. His eyes, though, told a different story, a flicker of the old kingpin visible through the mayoral facade. While his words were diplomatic, his tone and body language hinted at a deep-seated displeasure with the outcome. He subtly implied that while the court had spoken, the city still had its own ways of dealing with those who operated outside the established structures of power. His interview, intended to project an image of control and respect for the law, instead left a chilling impression that this was far from over for individuals like Hector Ayala. Despite Matt Murdoch's stern warning to lay low and allow the dust to settle, Hector Ayala, buoyed by his acquittal and perhaps an inflated sense of invincibility, made a fateful decision. He felt vindicated by the jury's verdict, believing it was an endorsement of his actions as the White Tiger. The urge to return to the streets, to continue his mission of protecting his neighborhood, was too strong to resist. He dismissed Murdoch's cautionary advice, likely viewing it as overly cautious. That very night, ignoring all counsel, Ayala donned his White Tiger costume and set out to patrol, convinced that his city still needed him, perhaps now more than ever. The night was dark, the city's underbelly stirring as it always did. Ayala, moving through the familiar alleys and rooftops, was perhaps a little less cautious than usual, a little too confident after his legal victory. He was looking for trouble, intending to prove that his acquittal had not diminished his resolve. Unfortunately, trouble found him in a way he did not anticipate. He wasn't confronted by common criminals or petty thugs. Instead, he was ambushed, caught unawares by a far more lethal and efficient force. The encounter was swift, brutal, and utterly one-sided, a stark reminder of the dangers that still lurked in the shadows of New York. Hector Ayala, the White Tiger, was killed. His brief resurgence as a free man and active vigilante came to a violent and abrupt end. The individual responsible for his death was not immediately identifiable, but the method was ruthlessly efficient, suggesting a professional with a specific deadly agenda. Ayala's defiance of Murdoch's warning, his eagerness to reclaim his heroic mantle, had led him directly into a fatal confrontation. His death sent a shockwave through the vigilante community and those who had supported him, a grim testament to the perilous life he had chosen and the unforgiving nature of the city's hidden wars. As the scene of Ayala's demise was later examined, a chilling calling card was discovered. Spray-painted nearby, stark and unmistakable, was the Punisher's skull symbol. This grim emblem signaled the return or the continued presence of Frank Castle, a far more brutal and uncompromising brand of vigilante. Its appearance near Ayala's body served as a dark omen, suggesting that a new, or perhaps old player was making their presence felt, one whose methods were far removed from the measured justice sought by heroes like Daredevil, or even the community protection offered by the White Tiger. The symbol promised more bloodshed and a deepening of the conflict for control of the city's soul.